Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jamie, and we are here for Let's Talk Mental Health. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in Christian counseling of substance abuse and addictive disorders. I received my license in Arizona State Prison, and I did that for a few years before I had a midlife crisis and realized I wasn't what I wanted to be when I grew up. Somehow I've stumbled into the world of YouTube and TikTok, so here we are. Today we have a special guest with us, JD Tremblay, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is JD Tremblay. I am an integrated engineer, an ultra endurance triathlete, a naturopath practitioner, and the director of high performance and mental resilience at Hungry Warrior Academy, where we help men develop physically, mentally, and also spiritually with our DECA system.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction. Now, before we get started with the questions, I'm just going to do a quick little round of housekeeping. So, first things first, everything here that we discuss today is just for discussion based on experience and based on either credentialing or education. Nothing here is a substitute for counseling or any type of treatment. We do recommend that you go see a doctor, therapist, provider if you have questions, or go look somebody up on your website, maybe JD if you're in Canada. But this is not a substitute for any type of mental health treatment. It's just an open discussion today. And we do ask that if you feel like you might be triggered by any of the topics today, which I don't expect us to be discussing anything triggering, that you reach out to the crisis line. If you are in US or Canada, you can dial 988, and I believe you can even text 988 now. So we're going to go ahead and get started with today's discussion. We're going to talk about the science of resilience and building a mind that does not break. So, for people meeting you for the first time, you have a fascinating career from military service to biomedical engineering, becoming a naturopathic practitioner, an ultra endurance athlete, and now you coach others. So, tell us a little bit about your journey and what connects all of these experiences for you.
I grew up in the northern part of Quebec, so I'm French Canadian. I lived a lot of bullying as a child, and my parents got divorced as a young kid. So at the age of 17 years old, I decided to leave the family home and join the military. I served for over a decade. I thought the military would give me a lot of discipline, and little did I know that they don't. What
Mm.
they give you is a system and a structure. If you follow the system and the structure, the byproduct is discipline. So it's up to you to uphold that standard for yourself because they won't hold it for you at all.
Right,
So
right.
I'm sure
No.
you lived it before.
Yes, yes. And I can relate to that because I went running from a life of unstructure. I lived a life of not structure, joined the military, and that's actually where I learned my discipline as well. It's definitely about being up to you as the individual to uphold that discipline. So, looking back, was there a defining moment that shifted how you thought about mental toughness?
Yeah, definitely. I thought that it was about this building the discipline and all the structure. And then finally, I found that it was really about pride. So that's when I did the Epic DECA. That's when I realized that I was putting a lot of limitations on myself based on my pride. And then after the Epic DECA, then I realized that we're capable of so much more.
Okay. All right. I love that. And can you explain what the Deca is for those of us who may not know?
Yeah, for sure. The Epic DECA is a triathlon. So triathlon is three sports into one. So it's swimming, biking, and running. Within the triathlon umbrella, you have multiple distances. One that many people might be familiar with is the Olympic distance. So you see it on TV throughout the world. That is just a distance of triathlon. And then one of those distance is an Ironman distance. So the Ironman distance consists of 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles of cycling, and then you finish it off with a full marathon, all in 17 hours within one event and all three sports.
How do
Now,
you
for the
train
Epic
for something?
DECA, yeah, that's just one.
Wow. Okay. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
Now, for the Epic DECA that stands for 10 in Latin, it's an event that happened once and it was for their 10-year anniversary. So they wanted to push the limits. And the event is called Epic 5. So it's 5 Ironman and 5 Islands and 5 consecutive days. So not only do you finish one of those Ironman that I spoke about, but then you fly to one island to the next also in between those Ironman. Now for the Epic DECA, there were 10 people registered, 6 people showed up on the start line, and only 3 finished. So 3 in the world finished the Epic DECA, which is 10 Ironman distances in 10 days on all 6 Hawaiian Islands. So I swam, bike, and ran all of Hawaii. That's basically what it is.
That is wild. How long did it take you to prepare for that?
A few months, yeah.
Okay.
But
I bet you
again,
were
it's
exhausted when you were done, huh? You probably had the best sleep of your life.
yeah, it's especially during the event. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was the best 15 minutes of my life. I just wanted to sleep. I was done. That's it.
I believe it. I believe it. You're probably so did you get sick afterwards? Because I know sometimes like marathon runners, they get sick afterwards from doing the 26 miles or whatever.
No, what I reached was a state of outside of a body experience. So I had no sensation within my body at all. Any type of stimulation was exhaustive for me. So if I had light bulbs were really difficult on my system. I was not able to function well, even within the confine of a normal, healthy relationship with people. Like having many people around me,
Hmm.
I just couldn't. So I just had no sensation.
So many people think that resilience is something that you're born with. Do you believe that resilience is actually something that can be developed?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It
Okay.
starts with motivation. So something will motivate you based on your hierarchy. And then you will build a certain level of discipline, whatever discipline looks like in your life. And then with that discipline, then you build resiliency.
To this, but you talk about optimizing human performance. What does that actually mean, and how can the, average listener understand that?
Well, the average listener, if you are average, you are at the bottom of the food chain. You are trying to, you are still trying to learn the basics.
Okay.
And that might be to know how to run and have discipline. It might be to optimize your energy regulation. So for the majority of people, they're looking at the basics and um, not some fads. Because I had a client the other day and he said, "Oh, should I switch my clothes to linen because there is a better frequency?" And I saw online some TikTok video that said I should have natural fibers. And I said, "How about you clean up your diet before you change your clothes?" That would be a better outcome for you. You could get better results out of it. So if we're talking about average, the average person in the US has some form of illness that is going to take their life.
Hmm.
So that's the average person in the US right now, whether
Right.
it gained it through food addictions or some type of, and we look at drugs and alcohol, but food is as important as other drugs when you take a look at the types of addictions.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think especially in the US, obesity is like one of the number one chronic illnesses, but it's also one of the, killers of health pretty much because you end up with many subsets of issues like diabetes or high cholesterol. And part of that is we have a very high fat addictive diet here because for years and years and years, many of us were taught the old food pyramid with 6 to 11 servings of bread. And, that's how we fatten pigs, literally. That's how we fatten pigs. I had a father-in-law who used to have pigs and they gave them bread to fatten them up. And so now we have to come out of that in this new, like, no, you should actually be getting more fruits and vegetables and higher protein and less carbs. I agree with you on yeah, in the US most, and we have not the best healthcare on top of that.
Well, it's just based on your question. Your question was the high performer and average. When you are a high performer, you are not average.
No,
You
yeah,
are
absolutely.
a person that wants to optimize your life. And the start of it starts with values.
Hmm.
Then, once you have those values in place, then you can pick a goal because there's no goals that is necessarily inherently wrong in of itself, like going to become a doctor or become
Right.
a licensed psychologist is not wrong in of itself having this
Right.
goal. But if you don't have your proper values, then that's not then you will end up with a lot more problems.
Right. And I guess to kind of tie back to the discussion about the food addictions, right? So let's say we have somebody who is struggling with chronic obesity. Do you think it's possible for them to be able to optimize their performance? Like it might be a slow journey, but is it possible?
Yeah, definitely. So the first step is, and we use the four-step process. So
Hmm.
it's very simple, and for all types of addiction, it's you can use it. So it's very simple. It it's an acronym called RISE. So R is recognizing patterns, I is identity, S is structure, and then E is engage in healthy challenges. Everybody can remember it very, very quickly, even if we have some guys that have been affected through their addiction. Their brain has been um, underdeveloped as a result of these neural pathways that have been disconnected because of
Hmm.
those addictions. So even then, they're able to remember four steps. So everybody is able to remember it, and it's one word. So rise. So recognizing pattern, I identity, S is structure, E is engaging in healthy challenges.
I like that just because it's not even just the acronym. It's if you're trying to overcome something, right? I feel like rise is just the perfect word because it ties right in with overcoming, right? How do we overcome something? Well, we have to get over that hill, right? How do mental performance and mental health complement one another?
Mental performance and the other one,
Mental health, how do they complement each other?
mental performance and mental health. Well, the healthier you are, the better you are at regulating your system.
Hmm.
So we look at someone who is running a 5K. Okay. And we're looking at
Hmm.
it from a physiological point of view. And that's just because for the majority of people, if you're looking at someone who has crutches, they are
Hmm.
more lenient at giving them help opening the door because they're
Hmm.
seeing a physical deformation or a physical problem. But if they are seeing someone with PTSD, they are less lenient to give them help. So that's why I'm using an analogy of a physical
Right,
body.
right.
So someone who's running a 5K, at first, their first 5K might be the most excruciatingly painful time of their life. After 2 kilometers, they're out of breath and they're not able to talk. And you can see that if they do a 5 kilometer run very, very slowly for an entire year, so 365 times a 5K every single day, whether they're walking it, at the end of the year, that 5 kilometer is quite easy and they're not out of breath anymore. So take that analogy, superpose it onto a psychological performance, and then you can see that you're able to regulate your system much faster by training your performance at a mental level.
No, and I like that example that you used because to walk every single day, right? And my goal was to build up to 5K because I do struggle with weight. I do struggle with energy levels and mental health. And I remember there was a point where I could do 5 miles and I would just feel amazing afterwards. And just walking. And it felt like it got easier and easier and easier the longer I did it. And I didn't even do it every single day. I did it like every other day I would go walk. Exercise in general has good benefits on your brain. It also, I think, makes you more conscientious about your food because if I have a lot of sugar and then I have to go walk, I don't feel the same as if I have a lot of protein and then I have to go walk. Do you think that somebody can appear successful on the outside, but their internal resilience is slowly deteriorating?
Yeah, definitely, especially for men. That definitely, and that's again, it ties it with what I said earlier. It's based on pride. So, um, men don't want to talk about it, or they can't talk about it based on the system that we have. You think the
Hmm.
educational system or the uh, you talked about the medical system earlier is bad. Well, wait until you see the judicial system against men. So,
Oh, I trust me, that is a soapbox I could go on for hours about. But I think the
yeah.
other thing is too, right? I think there's a little bit of culture and environment that plays a role in that too. And I think one of the things that gets overlooked when it comes to men's mental health is there's a couple different aspects, right? So one is men are supposed to be the providers. So that's where their ego plays a role, right? Because they don't want to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm really struggling with my mental health right now. But then we also have the culture of I was born in the 80s. And I remember even just growing up, boys don't cry. Boys don't cry. You shouldn't be crying. If you're crying and you're a boy, then, you're acting like a girl. And I think that it's going to take a couple of generations to really undo that. So I think that plays a role too in why it's a struggle. And I think that's why we hear about these men who, they look like they have it all together on the outside. And then we find out that maybe they have a substance problem or maybe they end up killing themselves. And it's because internally they were struggling because outside they had this facade. And my goal and my mission at the end of the day is to have these, discussions about how we can change these things because I think that just because you're a man doesn't mean you can't be vulnerable. It's just going to be different. And I think the hormones too play a role. Men's hormones tend to make them a little more, I don't want to say aggressive, but more, it's just women are more like empathetic and maybe have the mother nurturing instinct, and men have more of the protective provider instinct. And I think they feel like being vulnerable can interfere with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, who can we talk to?
Who can men talk to?
Yeah.
Okay. Other men, I think. I
Yeah.
think that's why group therapy is a big role in um the counseling industry is especially when they break it up by gender because I think that men talking to other men it's more relatable for them.
Yeah.
They find out they're not alone.
Yeah.
So,
So there's a difference between vulnerability and weakness, and that's the barrier that men have to understand.
yes.
I, being vulnerable can also be a weakness, but it can also be a strength. So I'm a firefighter, and there are certain tasks that I am not really the best at,
Hmm.
but I understand the task. I would be able to function, but I understand that this person functioned much better in that position. Somewhat like a special unit. A special unit would have a guy that breaks down the door, and then you would have a guy that is a medic, and then you would have
Hmm.
a guy that is part of the communication, and you would have an officer, right? So then you would have four of those guys going into rooms and then clearing them. So that's very similar with firefighting. Now we are supposed to be proficient in all jobs, right?
Hmm.
As for you, well, you served in the military, so they always say in the military, in all military throughout the world, you're a soldier first, right?
Hmm. I knew where you were going with that. Yep.
So when you are in an environment where other people are putting you down because of some culture where
Hmm.
they're saying you're you're an airman or an
Hmm.
airwoman or you're in the Air Force, so you're
Hmm.
you're not the best. Oh, you were in the army, oh, you're not the best. Oh, you were a
Right.
Marine. Well, they never
Right.
say they're not the best. then then again, what you're doing is you're just saying, in general, all of these people should be excluded from that place. And then we're seeing it right now a lot more with veterans, because now you have veterans that have this mentality, go at the Legion,
Hmm.
and then they're saying, oh, you were Air Force? Oh, no, 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 no. We don't hang out with guys in the Air Force, or we don't hang
Right.
out with guys in the Navy. And so you're just pushing those guys away, when really there needs to be some form of cohesion within the team,
Hmm.
understanding that these people have served a task, whether it was Air Force and they were bombing in some place, and
Hmm.
well, you need air support, even if you are in the Army or even if you are in the Marines, you need that form of air support. So there needs to be some form of help. You were in the stores, you were just
Hmm.
handing out paperwork, or you were giving out books. We need these people in the military
Right.
because of some tasks. So there, you need to understand, part of your team, there is a weakness, and
Hmm.
then there are these people that will not be able to fulfill the task that you want them to fulfill. Like
Hmm.
countless times I've said, I've asked tasks for people. Like one time I asked someone, I was struggling financially, and I asked someone for money, and I got angry at the person because they did not give me the money,
Hmm.
not knowing that the person was also struggling financially. So that
Right.
person might not be able to give you exactly what you're asking. And sometimes that might just be a hug. That might
Right.
just be an ear, someone listening to you. That person might have just not had these types of moments in his life that he's
Hmm.
able to open up. And so I remember for me, it was my dad. My dad, when I talked to him about my problems, he said, "Oh, no, 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 you just got to be a man. That's it." Now, he's come around now,
Right. Right.
but again, at the time, he was not able to give me what I needed. And so I had to understand he had that weakness, and I had to understand that I was not able to be vulnerable in that case, because it would have become a weakness of
Hmm.
mine if I opened up in this sense. So
Right.
it works for a lot of men nowadays, where they're opening up certain topics
Hmm.
to sometimes their partner,
Hmm.
and they're being vulnerable in some cases, and it becomes a weakness because their partner, which they're supposed to support him, it
Hmm.
becomes a weakness because, well, that's where the person is now attacking in within their couple, therefore destroying the family unity.
Hmm. Okay. And I think one of the things that you bring up there is, it's one thing to kind of be like, oh, we always say chair force here. Oh, you're chair force. It's because they have the nicer DFAC and the nicer buildings. Let's just be honest. We're just jealous. And that's what it is.
Yep.
But one of
Yep.
the issues that I saw as well, in some of like the veterans organizations like Legion, American Legion, and VFW, right, is it's not even just, oh, you were combat and you weren't combat. It's uh I was in Vietnam and we were forced to go to war and you guys had the choice. And that sounds really crazy because like either way you both served, right? So why does it really matter? And I think we get too caught up in what is different instead of what we all have in common. And I think at the end of the day, we're humans, we're not robots. And we all have feelings and emotions, just some of us don't want to acknowledge that. And I think it's really, really important. And I think again, this goes back to men have been taught for a long time that showing any type of emotion or distress is a sign of weakness when it's really not. And it makes me think about that stupid saying. I don't know if they said this in Canada, but they had it here about pain is weakness leaving your body. It's kind of the same idea, but it's in your brain. How do you think your military experience shaped the way that you can approach stress in your own life today?
Well, the military gave me a task, a mission. They made it so simple that a that would be a dishonor to a monkey to say that he can do it, and worse than a monkey could do that job. That's how the
Right.
military they, they create all their jobs like this. They break
Yes.
down everything like this, and you
Yes.
could put a monkey into the position and they would probably do a better job than you.
I call it breaking it down Barney style because there are some people who catch on and there are some people who are like, how the hell did you get here? Let's just be honest, right? Because we all know that one guy that you're like, who recruited you? They should be slapped. So some of us were like, this is so boring. Can we move on? But for other people, they need it broken down that simple. I think the biggest struggle that I have when I approach stress is I forget that not everybody has the same experience as me. So when I'm dealing with something and people are freaking out, I'm like, why are we freaking out? We can get through this. We will solve this. I need you to stop freaking out. And it's like, not everybody was taught those skills like we were. What lessons from the military translate into everyday life for people who have not served?
That they are more disciplined than they think. For us in the military, we just have that structure, we just have that system, but not everybody is disciplined in the military. That's not
Hmm.
true. That as soon as you join the military, they don't cut your brain, put a chip, and then it says discipline on it, and then you have
Right.
it. That's
Right.
not how it works. There's a
Right.
lot of people in the military. They're not disciplined at all. They're always pushing the limits with their attire or the way that they handle their weaponry.
Hmm.
Like it happens so often. We had girls on the range where the sergeant was saying was asking a question and she's wearing earmuffs and she says what she
Oh my
turns around
goodness.
and he says hey don't do
Yeah.
this
You're
and so
flagging me
otherwise you're
there.
kicked off of the range and so uh so he's talking to her one more time. Another guy comes in, talks to her, and she says, I can't hear you. And she turns around. And so they kicked her off the range, brought her
Right.
back, and she did the same thing over and over
Right.
again. And it's not you're not hearing right. You're just not disciplined enough to make the
Right.
changes. So
Right.
that's why I learned it.
Right. And we can laugh about it, but the sad reality is that it's not always something you can laugh about. Some people learn that in a horrible way that like you've got to pay attention, and I always think of like going into the military is almost being indoctrinated. And the reason I say that is because up until I had went in, I had zero discipline. And I had people who thought I wouldn't make it through. And ironically, they thought I wouldn't make it through because I am such a smart mouth and they thought I would pop off and get kicked out. And it was the opposite. I got in there and I just wanted to keep my head down and do what people told me to do so they wouldn't notice me. Because you're in this group of people and there's always somebody who wants to stand out. And I knew I did not want that person to be me. But even after going through all of that time, I still struggled with discipline in certain areas. So I struggled with discipline in like physical fitness, right? So I knew I probably should have been doing extra workouts. Was I doing that? No, I was not. So I think to some degree they give you the tools, but again, it comes back to that individuality. Like some things are just up to you. And I think that is one of probably the biggest lessons that I learned is that like I'm not always going to have a drill sergeant screaming at me to do this or that. I have to do that myself without that person yelling at me. How do high performers know when they're pushing themselves in a healthy way versus simply ignoring maybe warning signs?
You're so at a molecular level, all of your cells are vibrating right now. And so when you are in a negative state of mind, very, very often what it means is you are not even in the right calling. You are not even in the right direction. So very, very, very often your body is able to, we're not just talking about fear of the unknown. We're talking about fully knowing you're not in the right space, but you just keep pushing because someone has told you that if you keep pushing, then you will succeed. And that's not the case. You
Right.
understand if you are in the right place at the right time. It's almost as if, for me, I'm a Christian, so I see it as God is opening all of the doors, and then you're
Right.
able to walk through them as if it's super easy. And then you will notice the analogy I could use is a corkscrew, and then you put it in the water, and then you just let it go. It will always come back to the surface. So that's how high performers know that they're in the right space.
So you've completed one of the most demanding endurance events in the world, which you shared with us very early on. What did that experience teach you about the mind?
Well, that we're capable of pushing ourselves way further than what we think. So for me, my grandfather was crying when I told him I was doing the Epic DECA. He thought I would die.
Hmm.
And I had accomplished a lot of Ultraman races and Ironman around the world, but I never at that level. And that's what it taught me, that Epic DECA, is that I'm able to push myself beyond what my body can even handle,
Hmm.
to a point where I was not like physically, I had no sensation.
Hmm. I think I'm going to tell you this weird story, but I think it ties to what you're saying just because. So my oldest son is 26. And a couple of years ago, he was up here. We went to the Colorado River. We live right on the Colorado River. And I don't know how much you know about it, but we live near a dam and they let a little bit of water out every day, right? One day, when we were there, he thought it would be a great idea to give me a heart attack. And he's a very good swimmer. And so he was like, I'm going to swim across. And, people drown in this river all the time. And you're really not supposed to do that without like a life vest. But, he was 22 or 23 at the time. So, you know how at that age we're invincible. And he swam across. And you could see when he got to the other side, he's coughing and huffing and puffing. And it took him a while. He had to like catch his breath and then swim back across. Well, the later in the day it gets, the more water they release. So I was like, okay, he made it to that side. He's good. But now he has to make it back to this side. And of course, worst case scenario, we would have just driven across the state and gone and picked him up. But, he has to show off that he can do this. So he swam back across. And he goes, there was a couple times I wanted to give up, but my will to live was stronger than my will to give up. And he was like, it's really about endurance and it's all in the mind. And he's like, would I do it again? No, it kicked my ass, but at the end of the day, I wanted to make it back to the other side. And it just kind of, when you're talking about right now, how we have probably more strength than we think we do, that's the story that popped into my mind because I know that I am not a confident enough swimmer or a strong enough swimmer to do that. But he knew that he could do it. He just was going to have to push through. And so I just think that it's an example of what you're saying. Even if you're not necessarily physically fit, sometimes we can get through anything because we feel like there's no other choice. I think if we convinced ourselves of that every time, we would probably get through even more things. So, what do you think happens mentally when your body wants to quit?
Well, at a neurological level, or what's the like? Do you want
I
it like,
I think
because
when your body wants to quit, what do you think is going on in the brain? Do you think the brain is
it's on
do you think
autopilot? Yeah,
okay.
it's on
Okay.
autopilot, and it's based on the parietal side of the brain. That's the image that you have given yourself, that there is a reward at the end of it. And then on autopilot, your brain just operates. So you can, to a certain extent, break down those neural pathways to the frontal lobe, because that's where you make the decision.
Hmm.
So what happened? That's why a lot of people go into those unhealthy relationships and then they stay
Hmm.
for far too long. We've all done this. We've
Right,
all
right.
had a girlfriend, had a boyfriend,
Hmm.
and we just stay for too long. Well, what happened is we have created in our parietal side, side of our brain, the image of what we want.
Right,
So for him, for your son, he created that image that my mom's going to be proud. I will cross that river, and uh, it will be a pride moment where I will be successful. So he placed that in his brain. He placed that
right,
image in his brain, which is
right.
that's why many books talk about it. They don't talk about it to a level like neuroscience to it,
Right.
but
It's the bragging rights and the
Napoleon,
visualization, I think.
yeah, Napoleon Hill talks about it in his book, Grow Rich, Think Rich, Grow
Okay.
Rich.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen that one. Yeah.
they talk about it where they're saying all you have to do is just tell your brain about your goal,
Hmm.
and your brain at a subconscious level, which is the parietal side, because now they've done EEG scans. So when Napoleon Hill was writing the book, it was EEGs did not exist, so
Hmm.
that's why we did not know. So now when you correlate both, then you can see what is happening with the brain. So people place an image
Hmm.
of what they want to accomplish, and then if you uh, over observe it
Hmm.
at a level of I should, yeah, let's use the word creep. Okay,
Okay.
everybody has this picture of a creep.
Hmm.
Just can't get over that girl.
Hmm.
He has to look through the window. He has to make 1,459 phone calls every day. He has to make sure that he listens to everything of hers. He has to buy everything of hers. Okay, like if we treated our goals, okay, in a healthy way,
Hmm.
like this, then we would succeed at every levels that we want, whether it's the business, whether it's having a healthy relationship, whether it's being financially secure.
I
If we
like that
treated it like
because
a creep, yes.
I like that because that ties in with like the whole words have power, right? So if I say, God, I'm so dumb, yeah, I'm gonna really struggle learning things because I keep telling myself I'm dumb. But if I say, I know I can do this, I know I can do this, I know I can push through, then I might struggle along the way, but eventually I get to where I want to be. So I think that ties into the words have power because I think how we talk to ourselves does play a role on like subconscious, level of, can I be, and I think that's how people get stuck in cycles, right? If they're, going to work and they're just so everything always bad happens to me. Well, yeah, because you keep, saying that, of course, and that has actually taught me to try to always find the silver lining. Like, what lesson did I get out of this? Because I think that's how we figure out. I think that's kind of how I started convincing myself that I could get through things was by saying, well, I dealt with this, this, and this, but I learned what to do differently next time. And I think that that was easier than because, well, a whole other tangent, but essentially, if we keep telling ourselves that we can't do this or we can't do that, it just grows and it's contagious. You ever notice, like in a room full of people, if somebody's like, "Oh, this sucks," like everybody else starts saying, "This sucks too," right? But if you're like, "Oh, this is great," "Oh, what's wrong with you? Why are you all rainbows and sunshine?" Like if you come in and you're all positive. So I think part of that all plays a role on our subconscious. Do you think that endurance is physical or more psychological, or a little bit of both?
Well, it's arbitrary what I'm going to say about the numbers, but it's just
Hmm.
to showcase the difference in either. And there's many books written about it. I talk about it even in my book, where I even say that the numbers are arbitrary, but it's 80% mental and 20% physical for everything that we do in our life, even if you are a concrete worker or someone that works construction. This is a fact across the board. There's nobody that is saying that is all physical. The body will leave much faster than the mind does.
Right. Right.
So when your mind leaves, then it's all autopilot and spiritual, and then you get the out of body experience, and that's where you develop a lot of illnesses. So yes, I would say that it is majoritively psychological for everything that we do, and then there is a small portion that is physical because the body is able to function on autopilot.
Do you think that doing this DECA event, this major DECA event, do you think it changed how you approach adversity in everyday life?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it got easier. And now I look at tasks and it's it's even difficult now to get me excited. Last year I swam between two provinces, um, like about 17 kilometers. That's what 12 miles, give or take. We raised $65,000 for chronic illness kids to go to summer camp. I there's tide shift, current shift, sharks, cold water. I swam for 7.5 hours nonstop. Again, I finished and I went to a restaurant. There was no clapping. I it's almost as if I had no joy in finishing it. I just knew I could, and that was
Mhm.
it. So there
Yeah.
was no challenge about it. So now the challenges just got a lot different, and now
Mhm.
I know that I'm able to achieve much more.
Okay. So it kind of helped you realize that it's not so much about joy, it is about the endurance that you can get through anything. It's just a matter of how you mentally approach it, maybe?
It became a tool for inspiration for others. Now that
Okay.
I know I can do it, now that I know I can finish any race in the world, now that I know I can do it, I want to
Mhm.
impart that knowledge with others. So it's more on the aspect of helping others, which becomes the challenge because now they come from different levels of
Mhm.
mindset. So they have different barriers. So now being able to be approachable, understand that I can break,
Mhm.
understand that they can break, understand their limitations, understand that they can. We had a client who didn't believe that he could do a half marathon. And I said, yes, most people in the US, even the people who are overweight, obese, most people can do a half marathon. And
Mhm.
he did not believe it. He said, no, there's no way. And yeah, the guy ran a half marathon with me and with no training at all to prove it. And that just built um, his mental state to and brought it to a whole new level as a result. So
Yeah.
that's more on that side. Yeah, that's what it taught me. It taught me that now I can do it for others to bring them to another level.
So my whole theme for like 2026 has been leveling up, but also making an impact. Those are like my two priorities this year. And so I really feel like your journey is a testament to what you can do for yourself can help you make an impact in others' lives. You can talk about your own experiences, or just like you shared about the guy who didn't think he could do a marathon, that had to have made an impact on him that he was able to complete it, right?
Yeah,
So,
definitely. To have someone like me right beside of him. And it was hilarious too. Because he was this big black guy, right? Like really like big muscles and so
mhm,
when we showed up at the event, we're doing a half marathon and there was this old man. And I'm not big by any standard, bit shorter than 6 foot. I do triathlon. Like I'm not here to play football at all. I run fast. I run long distance. I swim, bike, and run entire countries. That's my strength. Otherwise,
Right.
that's so the guy played football. He always anyway. We show up at the half marathon, and there's this old man. He looks at him and he says, "Oh, what are you gonna do?" And he just talks to this guy, and the guy says, "Yeah, I'm gonna run a half marathon, and I'm gonna run it with JD here."
Mhm.
And he says, "Oh, wow, with him? Oh, you're probably going to carry him." And then they, like I was going to be the guy failing, and yeah, I did not speak. I just said, "Yep, yep, you're right, sir. I might get carried away." Yep.
He he had no idea who he was talking to, huh?
I
That's
had
funny.
no idea. The old man had no idea. It was just hilarious. A
That's,
hilarious moment.
but that also says like we can't assume things about people because I have seen, and this is one thing that killed me when I was in the military was we had some people who they were just like big people. Like they were considered maybe obese or overweight or out of compliance or whatever. We had a guy who could outrun some of the skinny people, but he was a bigger guy. But because he was a bigger guy, it was like, oh, you need to lose weight. And it's like you can, and then you have skinny people who couldn't pass the run. So it's crazy to me how we really can't assume by how somebody looks how well they're gonna perform. How connected is our physical health and our emotional health, do you think?
It's usually connected. So you talked a lot about feelings and emotions earlier, and there needs to be a complete dissociation of either because a lot of people just use them interchangeably, and in science they shouldn't, but in everyday life, uh, we can infer that the person is meaning emotions versus feelings.
Right.
So feelings are an experience of life.
Mm-hmm.
So if I try to buy a car and I just want the experience, I have enough money, I understand that I'm just buying a car and I want the experience and I'm just buying it, or I'm buying a bar of chocolate and I just want the experience of that specific chocolate, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That is a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an emotion is different. The emotion is your body's reaction to that stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, like, when I got into engineering, we were talking about weight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm talking about this disassociation of it, is because in engineering, when I got in, they're talking about weight, but weight is mass times acceleration. So you can't remove just acceleration, so it's mass. But I'm not going to say go mass yourself, but the number that you're seeing, you're not seeing the acceleration. You're not like they're just removing gravity out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're seeing, I'm going to say go weigh yourself. I'm not
Right.
going to say go mass yourself, right? So
Right.
we've connected two strongly used word such as
Mm-hmm.
emotions and then feelings together, and then we're telling guys, okay, don't have feelings. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's not don't have feelings, it's experience life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it will be tragic and people will react differently. You're inside of a fire, there's cars everywhere, bodies everywhere. You will react differently. Now, a feeling would be sometimes you're happy. I am. I
Mm-hmm.
am a firefighter. I show up to calls, like I showed up to one call and I had to hide my feelings because I was overly joyed to show up on that call, and yet um the person made it, so we were happy that it all turned out right. But I had to hide my joy
Mm-hmm.
because it would impact the other person. Now that's a feeling. Now the
Right.
emotion is the emotional reaction. So if I am surprised that this patient or this person
Mm-hmm.
does something, their is a body reaction. So I'm surprised. My heart rate goes up. Certain hormones will be so that I can quantify
Mhm.
versus uh, feelings. So I hope that that kind of clears up a little bit before I answer the question.
Yeah, no, no, no. And I think that makes sense. And I think that I think that's a good clarification, actually.
Definitely. And so I studied as a naturopath. So as a naturopath, it's strongly based on traditional Chinese medicine, and traditional Chinese medicine correlates the emotional reaction, which we just talked about, which is
Hmm.
the body's reaction.
Hmm.
So I am surprised. Heart rate goes up, pupils are dilated. There are certain hormones and certain neurotransmitters that will fire or be secreted based on the your body's reaction.
Hmm.
Now, having a physical body that is in shape, when I say in shape, is someone that is above average. If you are
Okay.
above average, you are in shape. Okay.
Okay.
So someone who is in shape would be, or above average, would be able to regulate their system much faster than someone that is average.
Okay.
And so by having an emotional reaction, having a stimuli, you have an emotional reaction because your body is able to regulate much faster than the other person. Let's take, for instance, cortisol level. Cortisol level is the stress hormone. Many people know about it. As soon as you wake up, your cortisol level is as high as it usually or typically is, and that's just to prepare you for the day. So you're stressed as soon as you wake up. Now, someone is healthy, so physically active, is going to regulate that cortisol level much faster and in a much faster rate
Hmm.
than someone who isn't. And so that's the correlation that I can make between the emotional and the um, physical body.
Now back to the question after that. So what role do you think sleep, nutrition, movement, and recovery play in mental resilience?
Well, sleep is in recovery.
Hmm.
Nutrition is your fuel. So
Okay.
depending on how you fuel, that plays a huge part in your performance. And as I would say, um, everything you do, do it for that purpose. So if you are lifting cars, so let's take a Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall,
Hmm.
many people know him. He's a strong man, big
Hmm.
guy, funny guy too. This guy is has a, a nutritional need that is
Hmm.
quite demanding, I would
Right.
assume.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And JD Tremblay, because he's swimming, biking, and running entire countries, has nutritional needs that are extreme as well. So we
Right.
both eat a lot.
Right.
And I'm not going to go into a competition as to see who eats the most, but we can both assume that Eddie Hall would be able to eat an entire chicken,
Hmm.
and JD would not eat a, or I can confirm that I have never done that yet. Eaten an entire chicken while I'm riding a bike.
Right.
So, and I say yet because maybe I'll try it one day just to prove a point. But the point was Eddie Hall eats a lot. He's an elite athlete. JD is an elite athlete, but we have different purpose. My
Mm.
purpose is to swim, bike, and run entire countries and inspire others. He is still inspiring others, but through the lens of a fighter, a guy that lifts cars, a guy that lifts heavy weights. He just eats differently. And so your sleep should be in the same way. Your nutrition, your rest, everything should be for that purpose.
Okay. And I like that you talk about, the consumption of food based on physical need, because I do know that if I am doing a lot more, I require a lot more food. And but it's not even just the food, it's like what you're eating is also important. I remember watching, I don't know, it's been a long time. There's I don't know if you've ever heard of Timbaland, the rapper, but he was talking about like nutritional journey, and he said, once I learned that you don't eat for taste, you eat to nourish your body, that's what helped me be more disciplined with food. And I really like that because it really does kind of tie into what you're saying, that you can eat as much as you want if you do those things, but if what you put in your body is crap, you may not be able to do those things as well. You might still be able to do them, right? But I am sure that Eddie Hall is not just eating a whole entire birthday cake before he does his competitions, right? So I mean, and if he is, then I'll eat those words, but I have a feeling he's probably not.
Yeah. Well, I do, so yeah. Yeah,
I
I
totally
do.
have been
Yeah.
guilty of getting sugared up before doing something, but I'm 44, so I'm getting to where I can't do that anymore because it just goes in places it doesn't belong. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the EEG stuff that you've discussed before. So you mentioned working with EEG technology. So what have you learned about the brain that most people don't know?
About the brain that most people don't know,
Yeah.
that we have neuroplasticity.
Hmm.
That's I have had many clients say, "Well, I'm an old guy. I've always done it this way. You can't teach an old dog some new tricks."
Right.
And neuroplasticity is, in neuroscience, the definition of it is that you are able to create new pathways. And yes, that is regardless of your age. So um, your neurotransmitters, or those synapses,
Hmm.
so every thoughts, they can be fueled, which can be fueled by the type of nutrition or the environment that you're providing it. So you're able to create new pathways. And many people think that because they've behaved a certain way all of
Hmm.
their life,
Hmm.
they're not able to change their brain. And yes, the brain can be rewired regardless of your age or regardless of your medical condition, also, because we've seen with even EEG scans that people that have severe mental problems.
Hmm.
Now, we're not talking about someone who's missing half a brain, then the brain would regrow. Okay.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. I am
Right.
talking about someone who hasn't used as much a part of the brain, such as
Hmm.
a porn user, someone who uses porn on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Their prefrontal lobe is, or can be, completely void of synapses. So you're not even able to function as a normal human being, and that's the it's been proven by multiple research that it's the worst drug because it's free, it's legal, and it's accessible as well, even for children, because all they have
Hmm.
to do is just,
Get on the
yes, I
phone.
am 18. I am
Hmm. Right.
I am
Right.
definitely 18.
The honor system.
Yeah, there you go. And then you find a loophole. So you're just hurting your brain for the long run. But eventually, if you quit those behaviors, you can rewire the brain. So that's what we've learned, definitely.
Well, and I think with that too, one thing I learned about process addictions and substance addictions is the only thing different is one is using substance. The other is whether it's gambling or shopping or porn, right? Those are just process addictions. It's still going to the same reward center in the brain. And I also think about how I don't think there's enough focus in the recovery community for these addictions on how you can retrain your thinking. You can send somebody to a bunch of different meetings. That doesn't teach them necessarily how to change their attitude towards their addiction. And I also think that we're coming out of this a little bit, but I think that people get caught up in some of the shame, and that it impacts their ability to adapt. And my biggest thing is I grew up in a life of chaos and dysfunction, unfortunately. But the one skill that it taught me was I can adapt in any circumstance. So I think that's like why my my level of resilience is so good. But a lot of people don't realize they have the ability to adapt. And I love when I meet people that are like self-taught, because that really is an example of what you just said. You can rewire. You can really learn anything. You just have to be willing to commit to it, because you just said yourself, your brain will rewire.
Yeah, and that's why the rise really connects very well with people because it's easy to remember. If I asked even an AA person that has gone through a 12-step process, all of to name me all 12 steps, the
Hmm.
majority of them won't even be able to name me a step past four. And
Right,
so that's why we created four step. It's rise.
right,
Automatically it tells your brain that you must rise up to the challenge, and you recognize the pattern. So it's really in your life. What is it that you are struggling? Might be completely different or might be the same as me. I might be struggling with food, but have a decent body. And now
hmm,
I had to adjust my fitness level, and I had to adjust. So I've had a lot of problems with food in my life as well.
hmm,
So we can't just judge a person based on the book cover. So we
right,
have to recognize those patterns in our life,
hmm,
create that identity that we are not going to indulge in a certain um, behavior, because
hmm,
you talked about process,
hmm,
or it can be a substance, because that identity, once and we figured this out because we looked at people who became vegan and people who, now I'm not advertising for veganism, but we're talking about people who stay on this vegan diet are saying, I am a vegan. So as soon as you're saying, I am a, and then you fill in the blank, then you have this identity attached to you. So now people understand, oh, this is a vegan. So
hmm,
they will behave in a certain way. They will not eat certain types of food.
right,
So you attach that identity.
right, right. And I think we get caught too much in people's identities because of that. So that's very, very valid point. One question I have for you, and I don't know if you would be able to answer, but if you can, I would love your thoughts. Are there evidence-based strategies that people can begin using today to improve their mental performance?
To improve their mental performance, well, we
Hmm.
have the BRAIN acronym that we use at the Hungry Warrior Academy, and we go in much deeper knowledge with the acronym, but for the time's sake, we're just going to fly through it.
Yeah.
So B is blood chemistry, R is recovery, A is attention, I is inflammation, and N is nervous system. So once you're able to really pinpoint the system that you want to work on,
Hmm.
then you're able to really optimize your performance. So for some people, it might be attention. So they have to understand the task switching cost
Hmm.
of there's no such thing as multitasking in neuroscience. I'm not thinking about this type of task. So
Hmm.
these natural tasks such as chewing gum and walking,
Hmm.
that's not multitasking. We're
Right.
talking about now I'm on a podcast, but my phone is on and I have all sorts of papers that are
Hmm.
distracting me. Now switching from one task to the next has a cost associated to it. So it might just be your level of attention, your cognitive bandwidth. Some people are there to drain you. And for the
Hmm.
Epic DECA, I called some of my best friends too. I said, I really like our conversations, but I know that you're quite negative. Okay, so he's one of those veterans that came out and did not really wanted to, and now he's complaining all the time. And I said, look, for this specific time, I don't have the bandwidth. I have to focus on the Epic Deca. I will call you back as soon as I'm done. But for this time being, my bandwidth needs to be completely focused on the Epic Deca. Okay. I blocked him from any way that he can reach out to me. And then I called him back afterward. Right? What about meeting overload
Mhm.
or the level of frequencies that are in your life? So some people are seeing their beautiful wife or beautiful husband as or handsome husband as a pillar where they can overshare and they can and what if that person in that particular instance is draining your life for that particular instance,
Right.
right? They might be the
Right.
best partner for you, but for that particular instance, they're draining your attention level because it's not what you should be focusing on.
Mhm.
And so really understanding that's just a now you can look at every single one and then
I
just
call
base
that
it on
capacity.
your own situation. It's what?
I call that being at capacity
There you
because
go.
we can all tolerate, like I can tolerate pretty much most people. There's very few people where I have a physical response to, I better get the hell out of this room, right? But there are some people where today I can tolerate maybe you're a really loud talker, but tomorrow I've been up all night and haven't slept well, so I am at capacity. I can't handle you today. And so it sounds like kind of like just going back to your friend, you were at capacity because you knew it was going to take away from what you were doing. You're going to probably like just laugh at me, but you said there is no such thing as multitasking. Let me tell you something. You're probably right, but let me just the in defense of multitasking, okay?
Neuroscience, yeah.
So I will say that I do have ADHD, right? So normally, let's say I have to go to something that my brain considers boring, right? Like maybe a meeting or a training. The only way for me to get through that training is to take notes and I retain the information better. So technically, maybe it's not multitasking, but it is, right?
Uh,
Because I'm listening, but I'm also taking notes. You don't think
yeah,
so?
that's not no, that's not
Okay.
multitasking.
Okay.
Multitasking would be taking care of a baby while you're taking notes while you're listening to a meeting. So if
Okay.
you're adding taking care of a baby at the same time,
Hmm.
then your focus is on one task and then it's also on taking care of the baby. That's called multitasking. Now, the cost, so let's look at it from a really like an engineering perspective, right? You have the time period and then you have the attention, okay?
Hmm.
And so when you're looking at it, you're focused on the call, but
Hmm.
then somehow within that time span for a short period you have to switch and go to the baby. So really going back from the baby back to that call, now you are using that cognitive bandwidth, which is in terms of time,
Hmm.
and by having it the cost associated because it costs you something. It costs you
Hmm.
not just energy, but it's not efficient. You're like efficient would be you're just focused on this. Um, the house is burning behind
Okay.
behind the door. The house is burning behind the door. You're completely focused for 1 hour, and then you are focused on that task. Now, doing a task that you're taking notes while you are doing this, uh, that's not ADHD, and that's not for the most cases that I've seen of ADHD is a lack of discipline. I've seen cases of ADHD and it's severe.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
really severe. The majority of people are talking about a diagnosis where they have not been diagnosed, have
Hmm.
been overly diagnosed or
Hmm.
self-diagnosed,
I agree
and
with
then
that.
they tell their brain, I am ADHD, therefore it justified their action, which is just an undisciplined behavior. So if they build that discipline by understanding, just similar to what your friend was saying,
Hmm.
that task switching cost, they're saying I am focused on this. And then they're changing their mindset, not associating their identity to some form of, which is a disease.
Right.
ADHD is an illness that is not helping
Mm-hmm.
the task switching, and then provides you with another level of information quite rapidly. And most cases of ADHD, what happened is they are undisciplined, and they're not capable of functioning in society as a result of it. What I've seen is you cut down screen time
Mm-hmm.
by a lot. You wear blue light glasses. There are different types. So there
Mm-hmm.
are daytime, there are nighttime also. Now the research, for some weird reason, some research backs it up and some research doesn't. Okay, for me, I've seen some changes in even my patients about these cases. And when you look at people who make it mandatory to build a discipline on that attention switching cost and
Mm-hmm.
understanding their cognitive bandwidth, you see a significant change. And when I back it up with a real life scenario, one part of our company is we are in 5 different countries, providing for thousands of children around the world with opportunities
Mm-hmm.
in places that they are extreme poverty.
Right.
I showed up in a tiny village in Kenya, and they don't have the proper nutrition, no needs.
Mm-hmm.
They have love to a certain extent, um, because they have a strong sense of community. The common factor and is that they don't have cell phones. So the majority of they can't afford to have a plan all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so uh, I've seen, and I don't know if we can see a correlation between the two, is that a lot of people, because we're surrounded with all these frequencies, we're surrounded with a lot of noise, which does affect our system. And since our system is looking for comfort, then what we're doing is we're saying, okay, I want something that is comfortable. So I will go and eat something. And I'm guilty of that too. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is survival. But for
Mm-hmm.
them, they can't turn to food. They don't have food. They can't turn to, so what are they turning to? Well, they can't turn to their phone. And there is not a single case in the entire village, and we're talking about millions of people. Uh, we're talking a lot of villages. There's not a single case of ADHD, and I've talked to nurses, I've talked to doctors. There's not a single case of ADHD in all of the country villages. Now,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, we shift to the city, which is in Nairobi,
Mm-hmm.
and then suddenly there are lots of cases of ADHD that apparently just appear out of nowhere. Uh, so, what is the difference between the two? Well, in the city, most people have to communicate and operate with their cell phones. And then in the countryside, a lot of people don't have their phones. So, that's what I tried to do is during um, the Sunday, I tried to block off my phone, try to shut
Mm-hmm.
it off, and very often I catch myself reopening my phone because I was waiting for this phone call. See, we've shifted this. Um, it's in the book Money. Uh, uh, I'll find the name of the book, but
Okay.
it was talking about how back in the days you would go to work and you would focus on your task, let's say building a house or a car, and you would leave your tools there. Then you would go home
Mm-hmm.
and then you would spend time with your family. Or if you were working in the woods really far, then you would not have to spend time with your family. But then when you get home, then you are spending time with your family because, well, now you are at home and your tools are at work.
Right.
The difference in society today
Oh,
is
yeah.
that I carry this
Mhm.
everywhere I go. So
Yes.
24/7 people can reach me. They can we can reach most people in the world because we're carrying this. We have the most amount of knowledge and we are not conscious enough of the amount of task switching.
Mhm.
Elon Musk says it in an interview when they said, what is the worst technology that has been created in modern time? And his answer, do you know what it was?
Cell phones.
Short videos. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Which
short
is
video
on
that
cell phones.
I
Yeah.
do think the short videos does play a role because I believe that, and I do think that's contributing to the ADHD epidemic. There's been studies, and I don't know if there's any current, but I know when I first started my college journey way back in 2001, there was a psychology teacher I had, and one of the things she shared about ADHD was there is a chemical, and I can't remember if it's in yellow dye or red dye in a kid's cereal that can mimic
Yes.
it does something in the brain that mimics ADHD. And that
Yes.
was before cell phones were really a big thing. So I do think that part of it is dietary. I know, like for myself, my biggest struggle is structure, but I also do a lot of zoning out, and I've done that since I was very little. So I either zone completely out or I hyper focus. So I will get really time blind. There will be days where I am so engaged in what I'm doing, and I'll look up and go, holy crap, it's 5 p.m. Where did the day go? Like, did I even eat today? And so I think that it really just depends again on the person. And that's not like I was very late in life diagnosed. So, and I did not self-diagnose. I want you to know that is one of my pet peeves. Just so you know, one of my pet peeves is when people self-diagnose because I
Yeah.
really hate, and when people self-diagnose their children, that really gets me because now you're giving them a label that they're identifying with that maybe they're not that thing. Maybe they just haven't blossomed yet. I definitely have the hyperactivity. So when I take the medication, my motor mouth is not motor mouth. I can feel that difference, but I do believe that diet does play a role because you know what I agree with. One of those struggles is this. And I think one of the things I am learning to do is set times to check email, set times to answer the phone, because I think we go, how you were talking about task switching, we go from the computer to the phone, right? And I'm probably a great example of why you can't multitask now that we talk about it. There was a day I was in a Zoom meeting on my MacBook. I had my Vision Pro on, okay? I had which is like the virtual reality. I had
Mm.
my cell phone in one hand, my other cell phone moderating a live, and my tablet moderating a live. And I was literally in a meeting with somebody because in between what she was asking me questions, I was doing other things because it was a really slow like meeting. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I actually ended up filming it, another thing to the task, because I was like a day in the life of somebody who helps, social media creators, and that's probably not helping me with my focus, right? And I've thought about that. So now I try to really stick to, okay, if we're on the computer, we're on the computer. If we're in a meeting, we're in a meeting. If we are reading a book, we're reading a book. Now, I do believe what you're saying there to some degree, that we probably are overdiagnosing not even just ADHD, just things in general because of technology. And I think about the era of the tablet kids, right? I grew up with video games, but it was like we could stay up on the weekends, but our asses better be in bed on time during the week because we had school the next day, right? But now you have kids who are coming home, they're on their tablet until they go to bed. And I believe there's studies that show that after 4 p.m., you really shouldn't be on your phone if your bedtime is 10 o'clock. I think that ties into your brain doesn't really go to sleep, right? People who have to sleep with the TV on, that blue light, it all affects your brain. How do people discover purpose when they feel completely lost? I like
So,
to give stumpers,
per-
sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Purpose is, well, that's because from a Christian perspective, it's quite easy for me because your purpose is to serve God and then to serve others.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to tie it in with people that aren't Christian, and it's more of that eternal restoration where you're restoring or understanding that there is a being that is outside of you that you
Hmm.
have to serve, and then there are laws. There's a law of the universe that you
Hmm.
have to follow. If you go inside of a lake, eventually you will get tired and you will sink. And
Right.
then once your body inflates and gets, because it's dead, then you will float. But
Right.
it's a discussion. If you drop an item, it will be with gravity. So there are laws. So you have to really anchor your values. And then for people that are empty, finding that purpose while helping others will definitely give you that sense of purpose. A lot of military members have lived this when, and you might be able to share yours as well, because for me, when I switched from the military to the civilian, I was taught to do everything by myself. So
Yes.
even though we're doing everything in teams,
No fail mission.
when I am in the civilian, now
Hmm.
I have to rely on myself. I I have, oh, I have a tear in my shirt. Oh, let me get the sewing kit. Oh, there we go. I know how to sew. Oh, there
Yeah.
we go. Oh, there we go. There's a little bit of iron. Oh, there we go. I know how to
Yep.
iron. Oh, I know how to do this. So I was taught to do everything by myself. That's
Yeah.
somewhat of the mentality that I grew up in. I was 17 years old when I joined, so just a child, and so I understood. Well, I have to do this by myself.
So do you think that purpose ties in a little bit with stewardship? Because I think stewardship doesn't have to be just a Christian concept. I think stewardship is just serving people in general and making that impact in your
Yeah,
community.
definitely. Because, well, even when Jesus was asked, he said, "Well, what are the, what is the best commandment?" Right? And
Right.
he said to love your God with all your heart, with all your
You're right.
soul, with all your mind. And then the second one would be to love others like yourself,
Yes.
and or love your neighbor like yourself. And so it's inherently correct that people love themselves. Okay, even people that are suicidal, the reason why they are suicidal for the majority of cases is because they don't want to be a burden for society, or they don't want to be a burden for others,
Hmm.
which again is just showing in their mind they're showing love to others,
Right.
uh, but they're showing a certain type of love to themselves
Right.
while trying to serve others by not being a burden. That's the mindset of a person who is suicidal. Okay.
Right. And it's so complicated too. So, and I think some people might see that as a controversial take, but I understand exactly what you're saying. They think that they are burdening others, so they think they're committing an act of love in a way. But,
Yeah.
and one of the things that you brought up as well was Jesus, right? So one of my favorite things that seems to be forgotten quite often, when I went to university, I went to a Christian university, Grand Canyon University, we were required to take Christian worldview. And one of the stories that stuck out to me, and now mind you, I was raised in a religious home since I was a child, but I was an adult when I heard the story and it stuck out to me, and it was Jesus hung out with the outcasts. I don't remember if this was said in the Bible or if this is like the concept, but it was more like church is for the sinner, not the righteous. So it's like a hospital. You don't go to a hospital if you're not sick, right? So you go to church for fellowship if you're not sick, but if you need healing, church is the place to go and get healing. And I think we forget about that when just in everyday life. So when Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, you don't have to be friends with your neighbor to love your neighbor. You just need to pray for them in some cases. You need to be willing to maybe not treat them negatively, but just stay away from them, right? But we don't want to wish harm on them. And I think people get very, very lost in the concept that that is still stewardship. And sometimes our purpose is just to, we can proselytize without proselytizing. We don't have to be like, let me tell you about our Lord Jesus Christ, right? Sometimes our behavior just models that. I just feel like that ties into purpose a lot. How do we intentionally build a life that allows us to perform at a high level without sacrificing our mental health?
Well, recovery plays a huge role. Definitely understanding what are your limits and then pushing them. That's why those races are there. That's why those events, whether you are a firefighter, there's a fire fit challenge, or you are a runner, there are running races, there are cycling races. That's why they're there,
Hmm.
is to push our limits at a level that is it's a fake. It's not even the real world.
Hmm.
So that's how I can explain it.
Where can listeners learn more about your work and your book?
HungryWarriorAcademy.com. And the
Okay.
book is on Amazon. Hunger for More in Life. It was a bestseller in French, English, and Spanish. And it's for most people that want to have a clear path
Okay.
to um, understanding more how to defy their limitations and overcome their mental struggles. And then that's this step process that I use to accomplish the Epic DECA, and they'll learn about the Epic DECA and all those funny stories in there.
Okay. And can it be found in Barnes and Noble, Amazon? Where can people find it? Or on your website?
It's on Amazon and on our
Okay.
website. Yeah.
Okay. As far as your program, is it just in Canada that you do the Hungry Warrior?
No, we have online courses, we have online sessions, and then we do have some in person. So um,
Okay.
people can either come in through our center, or we have some retreats that we have in other states. So we have one in Florida as well. So
Okay.
this is not a feel good type seminar, motivational speaker. These are guys that are battle tested before they even become some of the coaches that will be imparting that knowledge. So we have a former Navy SEAL. We have a doctor that has worked with his clinic in addiction for decades. So we do have battle tested Christian men that are there to impart their knowledge on the guys. So before we even get to the in person, they would have to go through a process.
I really love that you said that they're not just motivational speakers, like that you have a process, because there is a little bit in that industry, fake it till you make it. And so I appreciate the fact that you do the work to make sure they're not faking it till they make it, right? Because anybody, especially nowadays, anybody can get online and say, I'm a expert in my field. And they might not actually be an expert in their field. And we see that with some of the more popular motivational speakers, which I will not name, but you have to be very discerning. And I love that you have that in your program.
Those
Yeah.
men that get yelled at and get thrown into a bathtub but don't even understand what they're doing is they are telling the man that it's okay to yell at another individual.
Right.
So now when they get home, they just get yelling at each other. And so you're just creating undisciplined men that are basing all of their decision based on feelings and
Right.
not regulating their emotions. So now with these camps, they're learning from people not only battle tested, but these guys understand the science behind it. This is not
Right.
a camp where, well, let's be as clear as possible. No one will be yelled at in these camps.
Well,
This is not a this is not a motivational or feelings camp. This is driven on science. This is driven on research. This is driven on education. And so there's nothing out there that is like this with this level of expertise, with guys that it took us decades to get to this level of understanding and knowledge. And now we're ready to impart it in the minds of guys. And by doing it with science, then you're able to provide the results for the people. So that's why for us, we don't need the fittest people. We don't need the guys that have the most money or the guys that have the most
Right.
knowledge. Very often, they're the guys that are too prideful and
Right.
all they want is to be motivated. They want to show off that they can be in a cold bathtub
Right.
further than the instructor. They want to
Right.
get yelled at so they know that they can handle. We don't want these guys
Right.
because nobody really wants them. You want the guys that are emotionally driven and
Mhm.
able to deliver result, have the heart for a transformation, and we're definitely the best fit to deliver those results if you have the heart for a transformation.
Where is your center in Florida located?
Well, we don't have a center in Florida, but we do go in Jupiter.
Oh,
So
okay, okay. I was just wondering because so I don't know how familiar you are with the alpha male universe over on the YouTube, but it seems like Miami has so many of them.
mhm.
And we just a few days ago had two people from the alpha male universe picked up
Yeah.
on an international warrant, right? And
Mhm.
then we have another alpha male who, he actually had a really amazing story and he kind of blew it. I got out of prison, changed my life, made money, but he made his whole living allegedly running scams on people allegedly and also degrading people in his programs like yelling at them and what are you stupid and I just don't think that that's what people are looking for when they want to be motivated. I bring that up because it's a great example of how contrast to your program it is. If you want something that is legitimate, you have to do your research and have to have discernment. And the guy who's going back to prison because he can't control his emotions is probably not the guy you should be going to for advice on how to work on your inner self.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for, joining us here today. And I will make sure to put in the show notes your website, your book links, and everything for the listeners so they can check it out. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. I think I could probably talk to you for hours, but we both have things we have to do in life, right?